Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another episode of 6 of the Best. Today we're going to focus on the legend of Edward G. Robinson, as I'm going to pick 6 of my favourite performances or films. But again, please leave your comments of your favourite 6 Edward G. Robinson films or performances. Now here's a guy very much like Cagney in the sense that perhaps didn't have the matinee idol good looks, but certainly did pretty well for himself. So we're going to start with 1931, a fairly obvious pick. One of the films, if not the film, that kind of put him on the map as he exploded onto the scene, as quite a lot of actors do as villains or anti-heroes. And that's Little Caesar with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. This is almost a feral performance by Robinson. I guess this is where quite a lot of the impressions of Edward G. Robinson that people do come from, as a ambitious, wild gangster who makes his way up the ladder by any means necessary. Again, it's a short film, only 78 minutes, but doesn't need to be any longer, as he tears his way through Chicago. I believe it's Chicago, yeah, it's Chicago. It's always Chicago. That's fantastic. And then next, from 1935, John Ford's The Whole Town's Talking. This is from the John Ford box set by Indicator. This for me is the best film in it and my favourite film in it. And it's one of those films where an actor gets to play 2 roles. This is the simple Two-Face, if you like. The good guy, Edward G. Robinson, who just happens to have a gangster who looks a bit like him. And they spend the whole film getting confused for each other, and all hilarity breaks out. Co-starring Jean Arthur. This is an absolute blast. It's kind of an unusual film for Ford, because it's just rip-roaring entertainment, and again, actors love the chance to play dual roles or multiple roles, and Robinson's fantastic in it. Now from 1938, from Imprint, this is I Am the Law. And this is one of those films I'd never really heard of, so thanks to Imprint, I have now. Granted, this is one of the imprints, the rare imprints that have no special features whatsoever, but the film itself is an absolute blast. It's completely ridiculous, and if it was made now with Matt Damon or Denzel Washington, people would just go, this is far too silly. Robinson plays a college professor who teaches law. So far, so normal. And he's taking a sabbatical, but he just loves his job and the college town that he keeps trying to avoid going on holiday with his wife. They have a good relationship, but you can tell his wife is sexually frustrated and wants a holiday, because you can only have sex on holiday in 1938. But he comes across a scam where local businesses are getting attacked by the rackets, and he wants to shut them down, but it's basically just something to do during his sabbatical, so he doesn't have to go on holiday with his wife. So he gets taken on, but one of the people that kind of are involved with taking him on actually work with the rackets, so they just view him as a patsy essentially. He'll never do anything. He takes on this character's son as his assistant, and obviously you know how that ends up. There's a femme fatale And obviously it gets thwarted at every turn due to corruption and people taking payoffs in every department and every level of society, until he has to take drastic action to get it sorted. I mean, it's complete nonsense. There's a wonderful scene where three hoodlums have been terrorising this widow of a witness that actually came forward and then ends up getting killed. But with the help of the police, he brings them in to essentially his living room, because for reasons I won't go into, and he basically fights each one of the hoodlums one at a time. He's got press there to take photos of a before picture of the hoodlums and then an after picture after Edward G. Robinson's kicked their ass. It's just a wonderful scene as Robinson and the hoodlums kind of wrestle and punch each other over the living room furniture, breaking everything. It's just a hilarious scene that, again, if it was in a modern film, we'd just go, this is ridiculous. But it's Edward G. Robinson, it's a film from 1938, so it's fantastic. Well worth checking out. Then from 1944, Fritz Lang, The Woman in the Window. Again, a quote-unquote innocent character who gets swept up with Joan Bennett into a mystery in the underworld. Obviously the ending is fairly divisive, but if you just go with it, it's just wonderful. Again, when he didn't really play too many villains after his villainous start. He would usually play somebody swept up in something, or an innocent that's swept up in something. But The Woman in Window is quite wonderful as you see him squirm as the situation just gets worse and worse for him. Now the next film from 1946, he wasn't the first choice to play the character, and you could argue the film would be more interesting if the first choice actually got the role. It's Orson Welles' The Stranger. I think it's unfairly maligned just because it's almost a throwaway project. And yes, Agnes Moorehead was going to be the Nazi hunter, which would have made it probably a more interesting film. But Edward G. Robinson comes in and provides a little bit of class with his pipe, as Orson Welles as the Nazi on the run. It's a beautiful film, as you'd expect with Welles. Again, it's kind of treated like a throwaway film, but Robinson is wonderful as always, as is Orson Welles brooding away, and Loretta Young stuck in the middle. And then finally, it's fitting we just go to his last film, Soylent Green in 1973. And if you haven't seen Soylent Green, well, why haven't you seen Soylent Green? And obviously his final scene is quite moving when you consider this was his last film before he died. And the scenes where, again, if you're unfamiliar with Soylent Green, it's the future where food is scarce and you just get wee tablets of Soylent Green or Soylent Yellow. So when Chuck Heston manages to find real food, the reaction of Edward G. Robinson, who's obviously older and actually remembers a time where they had real food, those scenes are quite poignant and quite moving. And as much as Chuck Heston doing Chuck Heston things with his big square jaw, the star of the show is Robinson. It's a beautiful last performance, and it's a wonderful last film to go out on. So that's Soylent Green from 1973. So obviously you can see from 1931 to 1973, and he made a hell of a lot of films in between. So you could easily pick another 6 from Edward G. Robinson, but that's my 6. So hopefully you'll leave 6 of your best Edward G. Robinson below. I always look forward to reading your comments. So this is Soldier Ronan from Soldier Ronan Films. Until the next 6 of the best, saying farewell.